Yeah, we get into this one, baby. Let's go.
buzzing with anticipation for the headline act. But as lightning cracked from an approaching storm, their excitement turned to unease. Moments later, gale force winds rocked the massive stage, and the
This remind me of that
32-ton
episode of
structure
911.
collapsed, crushing everyone in its path.
Oh,
At first, it seemed like a freak accident, but the truth was far worse. This disaster could easily have been avoided, and the investigation into why it wasn't for 6 separate industries.
shit. See, bro, this shit be like this, bro. Hindsight, after we see what happened, then they go back and be like, this shit could all been avoided. But why don't, I know this isn't a perfect world. I'm playing devil's advocate. I'm not being dead ass serious, but I'm saying though, like, why don't we take niggas' safety more serious than we do? Cause niggas is getting sued at an all-time high at this point, bro. You know what I mean? So why the fuck would you not take precaution of people's safety at these events, bro? You know they're gonna be fucked up off the drugs, even if you may not sell it there. Not the drug part, the alcohol. But if you do not sell those there, you know they gonna come with it. So make sure niggas can get out. I don't know, bro. The Travis Scott shit just really blew my mind when it came to how niggas organize and set it up. All this money going into it, all these smart people that you would think. It's like, damn, y'all leave that part out? Like, I don't know.
to change how they
It's just
operate
crazy to me,
forever.
bro.
On the morning of August
Obviously, it
13th,
didn't change
2011, the Indiana State Fair
What,
was a
bro?
flurry of activity. As the state's largest event, it drew massive crowds each summer, right at the peak of the storm season. Fortunately, the fair had avoided the worst weather so far. A popular headline act, country duo Sugarland, were set to perform later that evening.
Sugar
That
Land.
meant organizers were expecting even more visitors than usual. The band had a watertight schedule for the next few weeks, so organizers were desperate to get everything right. But while a caravan of trucks unloaded equipment, the fair's director, Cindy Hoy, called an urgent meeting. The National Weather Service saw a storm front developing
At least she
across
called a meeting.
Indiana. It was likely to reach the stadium by early evening, meaning the show faced strong winds and torrential rain. Following the weather update, Ray Allison, an Indiana State Fair Commission
Ray
safety
Allen.
director, made frequent calls to the NWS to stay updated on the storm's progress. The rest of the team discussed how it could impact the show's timing. In the meantime, technicians began suspending heavy equipment from the stage roof and support columns, which drastically added to the stage's weight. Under ordinary circumstances, this wasn't a problem. That said, a stage had collapsed from strong winds just a month earlier,
Look,
so it was crucial they took extra precautions.
extra precautions that you can't do shit about, bro. You know all that wind is smacking the center of the whole platform, bro. That the wind is hitting.
As a
and taking
temporary
that motherfucker, bro.
superstructure, the stage was assembled by Mid-American Sound Corporation using pre-made aluminum truss pieces. They fit together like Lego to make the stage's frame and were provided by James Thomas Engineering. Once the frame was up, a massive
All
piece
these
of
niggas ain't
tarpaulin
cool.
was stretched across it and secured using wire lines to prevent it from toppling over. This
Shit ain't
guideline system was the only protection from side forces like strong wind, which meant the wires couldn't have any slack. They're a bit like the guy ropes you might have on your tent at home, but these are much bigger and much heavier. So instead of using metal pegs, they were tightly connected to concrete jersey barriers using ratchet straps. In an ideal scenario, the barriers should have been fixed to the ground, but this wasn't the case. Instead, they relied on their standing weight to keep the stage in place.
But see, this is that pisses me off, bro. Y'all know it's a storm. This is regular, just in case a little wind structure set up. This is not, let's get a meeting. Shit is getting crazy weather-wise. We gotta make sure everything is locked in. My nigga, y'all did not do it right with all this cheap shit.
Unaware of the danger it posed, by late afternoon, the technicians had finished installing several
Oh,
large
they didn't
speakers and
know.
LCD screens to the truss system. This was when the NWS broadcast a second weather warning, but this time it was far more serious. Despite a potential tornado coming their way, organizers didn't inspect the stage once it was completed or make preparations for a worst-case scenario. Instead, they planned to start the show as scheduled and open the doors to the public at 6:30. But before they were set to do so, another warning came from the NWS. This time, they released a severe thunderstorm watch notice
Not even an hour
and forecasted gusting winds up to 70 miles per hour. Winds of this speed exceeded the standard that permanent buildings need to resist and should have seen the show canceled outright. But director Allison didn't share the update, and thousands of fans filed into the open concert area without knowing what was headed their way.
This shit crazy.
30 minutes later, while fans were waiting for the opening act, director Allison learned the storm was closer than first thought.
Look at this
It
shit.
was now set to hit the stadium right in the middle of Sugarland's set. This update finally forced organizers to take action. But rather than prioritizing concertgoers' safety, show organizers were only concerned with Sugarland's schedule. They didn't want to disrupt their tour. Eventually, Director Hoy intervened and held a meeting with Sugarland's manager. The band were supposed to perform at 8:45, and Hoy wanted to delay the concert until the storm left the area. But instead of telling the tour manager that a potential tornado was on the way, Hoy only mentioned it was supposed to be raining, hardly a reason to delay the concert. So Sugarland decided to start playing slightly later than the original time and promised to complete their set in 2 parts if they needed to stop playing. Thinking the band had the final say, Director Hoy greenlit the plan. She then stepped outside their tour bus to issue instructions to the Spotlight crew. While doing this, Hoy had a chance encounter with State Police Captain Weaver, who was off duty at the time. Together, they looked at the oncoming onslaught from the front of the stage, and Weaver made the following comment.
Ma'am, it's not my call. It's not my site. But if it were me, I'd shut it down.
After urging the show to be shut down, Weaver asked about their evacuation plan. He was shocked to learn that Hoy hadn't even considered evacuating the stands, and they frantically tried to work out where to move concertgoers. But while they scrambled to salvage the situation, the NWS sent out an urgent update. The initial forecast was wrong. They only had minutes before destruction rained down on them. They had to let the people in charge know. However, a series of mistakes meant no one in charge got to hear about the impending danger in time. The only radio tuned into the NWS frequency wasn't in the operational base, and it's unclear if it was even switched on at the time.
What the hell?
Indiana State Police were little help either. They didn't update troopers on the ground and lazily assumed they already knew. The only people who were aware of the final warning were the fire department and a meteorologist who was legally required to be at the event. But the fire service only told its own staff, and the meteorologist merely repeated the warning to a production manager who didn't understand what it meant. To complete the circle of incompetence, just minutes after discussing the crowd's immediate evacuation, Hoy instructed an announcer to give the following message.
As you can see to the west, there are some clouds. We are all hoping for the best that the weather is going to bypass us, but there's a very good chance that it won't. So just a quick heads up before the show starts. If there is a point during the show where we have to stop the show on stage, what we'd like to have you do is calmly move towards the exits.
As lightning...
My man's, for one, it's a tornado. For two, is buku people in one spot. So you want hella people that already don't want the show to end. You want to let them know that a storm is coming towards us. I hope it doesn't hit us, but I know it's coming and it's gonna hit us. So when we're doing the show and we have to stop, please calmly evacuate. Nigga, now you gotta deal with niggas getting hit with destruction. Now you gotta deal with niggas getting trampled, bro. Lawsuits out the wild.
Cracked in the distance, some in the audience left immediately.
Get him the fuck out of there now.
Captain Weaver was astounded. He confronted Hoy, who somehow misunderstood their earlier conversation. Realizing the mistake, Hoy and Captain Weaver got the spotlight crew down from the rafters and headed on stage to tell the audience to evacuate. But it was too little, too late.
Shit
Terrified
going
crowd
down,
members watched on as charcoal
Shit is
clouds
going
eclipsed
down,
the sky. Dust and wind tore through the stage, and a sudden gust ripped the fabric roof clean off its structure. Those in the front row
That's some
scrambled to
bullshit.
escape the stage, but chairs and panicked ticket holders blocked their path.
Whole structure was some
They
bullshit.
were trapped,
bruh.
powerless, as the metal truss columns gave a sickening creak. Then, the unthinkable happened. Under the strain of 60-mile-an-hour winds, the barriers holding the guy
happened?
lines began to slide,
Oh, really?
pulling the stage off balance until the columns gave way, crushing anyone who couldn't react in time. In just 12 seconds, the show became a
That
catastrophe.
shit really crushed niggas.
Hundreds of brave concertgoers rushed to lift the structure off victims, whose desperate cries filled the air. They were joined by nearby staff and emergency crews, but it was already clear that some were beyond saving. A state trooper reported the emergency, which was instantly elevated to a mass casualty incident. Thankfully, the response was far more effective than the disorganized show, and responders completed the initial search of the site within 10 minutes of the call. But it was little consolation for those caught in the wreckage, some of whom were traumatized for years to come. 4 people were confirmed dead at the scene, and several others faced a fight for survival in nearby hospitals. In the hours that followed, police and the fire department surveyed the damage and double-checked for trapped survivors. But only one question was on everyone's lips. How could this happen? An immediate police investigation ruled out foul play, so the ISFC hired 2 independent companies to assess the disaster. A law firm looked into the emergency preparations, and engineering specialists inspected the stage's design and construction. During their tests on a scale model, engineers discovered Mid-American Sound Corporation only calculated the weight of the stage structure when they built the guideline system. When unloaded, it weighed around 11.5 tons, but this nearly doubled when all the equipment needed for performances was added. It meant the Jersey barriers were far too light to support the stage under normal conditions, let alone during a storm.
Oh, the weight was
The barriers also weren't attached to the ground, which could have prevented them from moving. Instead, they were placed on loose surfaces like sand and gravel, one of the worst choices possible for a large, freestanding structure in the middle of an exposed area. And this ultimately caused the truss columns to collapse. Even if Mid-American had used the correct Jersey barriers, engineers reported other parts of the system that would have failed. The wire used for the guy ropes was thinner than the stage manufacturer James Thomas Engineering recommended, who were just as liable for several mistakes of their own. In 2010, James Thomas engineers assessed the stage for safety. However,
Nigga be
like
thinking about that
Mid-American,
money, bro.
they failed to consider the weight of the performance equipment in their calculations. On top of this, they only provided limited technical information to Mid-American. So investigators concluded that it was unclear if the truss parts were suitable for building such a large structure in the first place. When all these failures are taken into account, the stage could only survive wind speeds of 25 to 45 miles per hour. This was less than half the
bound to
speed
crash.
required by international regulations. When the engineering report was released, it triggered a massive backlash from the families of the victims. Virtually every component wasn't fit for purpose, and they demanded to know how so many warning signs were missed. But this was only half of the picture. And when they learned about how organizers handled the event, it made the stage design look like a picture of model professionalism. They discovered the ISFC didn't have any information about the stage's safety, and damningly, this wasn't due to a mistake. Even though international codes said otherwise, Indiana law didn't regulate temporary structures at public events. According to them, the stage didn't need inspection. nor did it need to
Wow.
have its design approved before it was built.
Wow.
So despite the risk to thousands of people, they had no idea about its limitations or how it could be affected by strong winds. The report also found that organizers didn't have an emergency plan, even though they knew it was a glaring problem from a recent training exercise. A few weeks before the collapse, organizers acted out an emergency scenario almost identical to the storm during the concert. Following the simulation, the state realized it was utterly unprepared to deal with the situation. In response, the ISFC laid out several urgent tasks. Chief among them was developing written response and evacuation plans, and deciding who was responsible for canceling events in a worst-case scenario.
Should have been canceled that shit.
But despite acknowledging that these were vital issues, the concert went ahead with only partially completed plans and without a clearly defined person in control. They also decided against training staff with the few measures they had finalized and didn't use them
Who's your
in the
lottery
very scenario they were
bandstand?
designed for. It was the final piece of evidence from a damning investigation,
No, they
one
ain't,
that
yeah.
exposed mistakes at
Who's your-
every opportunity.
Who's your daddy?
The only aspect of the disaster that was managed well was the emergency response. Yet even this lacked basic protocols, which could have cost lives if they encountered problems freeing victims. Mirroring the organizers' terrible management of the emerging storm, responders lacked leadership between each department and used incompatible radios, which made communication difficult. Armed with the information from both reports, the victims filed a major lawsuit, which resulted in a $50 million compensation payout. Some were left disabled for life.
Dang.
Others suffered from brain damage that left one man unable to speak. Although Indiana State was found culpable, it was Sugar Land who caused the most uproar during the legal battle. The band's contract gave them the final say on whether to cancel the concert. And rather than sympathize with injured fans, their lawyers tried to argue that it was the audience's fault that they were injured because they
What?
chose to wait in the arena. But this argument didn't hold up,
That's fucked
and they
up,
paid the
man.
majority of the settlement alongside Live Nation, who organized the concert.
I get that's what you feel like, but you can't say that though. Like being a figure that you are, you just can't say that type of shit. You just can't say that type of shit.
As for James Thomas Engineering and Mid-American, neither faced legal repercussions for their part in the disaster. Instead, they only paid minor fines and reached undisclosed settlements away from the media spotlight. When all was said and done, sweeping changes were needed to prevent something similar from happening again. Over 20 safety recommendations were issued, which changed outdoor concerts forever. Regulations for temporary structures became stricter, building codes were updated, and Indiana revised its laws to include a new category for performance stages. Supervision of outdoor events were also drastically overhauled, along with new emergency response plans between departments. Despite these efforts, the changes haven't had their desired effect, as 5 stages have collapsed in the U.S. since the accident happened. A slap in the face to the 7 people who died at the fair, and a further 58 who were injured. If you found this video interesting,
Damn,
please
58
consider
motherfuckers
subscribing.
answered,
It's
bro.
help.
Damn. Shout out to them folk, bro. The only thing different with the Travis Scott shit is that it wasn't a structure that failed. It was just basically them that failed.